All right, we're going to work through most of this review guide. So take care to take notes or work these out. I recommend you try these by yourself at first and then kind of watch the video to see how we did it. Number one, what we're going to do here is we're going to complete the square, we're going to use elimination to combine these two equations. So really what I'm going to end up doing is subtracting them. So x squared minus x squared is 0. Same thing here. Same thing here. Now be careful, it's 10 minus negative 6. You're going to end up getting positive 16y. Then you're going to get 1 minus negative 15, so you'd end up positive 16. The whole point of elimination is that you are able to add the two equations together or multiply them by a number and add them up, or in this case, subtract them and eliminate one of the variables. And we do that quite easily here. 16y equals negative 16. Divide by 16, and you're going to end up getting y equals negative 1. Now with circles, if you just kind of sketch out a picture, two circles are going to intersect in exactly two places most of the time. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this y and we're going to plug back into one of the original equations. So we're going to say x squared plus negative 1 squared plus 2x plus 10 times negative 1 plus 1 equals 0. I'm going to basically simplify a lot of this. Obviously, the negative 1 squared is going to be just 1, and then the negative 10 there. You're going to end up with x squared plus 2x minus 8 equals 0. At that point, we're going to do some basic factoring. We're going to kind of break this apart, and we know that x times x is x squared. Now, at this point, I'm having to determine looking at this number here, and I'm saying, well, the factors of 8 are 2 and 4 or 8 and 1. I need them to combine to get a positive 2, so I can do that really easily with the number 4 and the number 2. 2 times 4 is 8. However, 4 minus 2, so we're going to make this a positive 4 here and a negative 2 there, so that I end up getting that positive 2 here. So we end up getting 4 minus 2 is 2. Real quick, I would always FOIL this thing back together just to double check to make sure that it works out. In this case, it does. So we end up getting x equals negative 4 and x equals positive 2. Now the solutions to these are coordinates. So we'll end up with negative 4 comma negative 1 and then 2 negative 1. So that's the actual solutions to the problem. So once you find both coordinates, make sure you put them in to the solution correctly. The next one is a line connected with a circle. This one, the step number 1 is to take the simpler equation, the line, and solve it for one of the variables. Here, we're going to take it x, that's going to be equal to negative 2y minus 4. I'm going to take this equation, and then I'm going to plug into that original equation everywhere I have an x. So it's going to look like this, negative 2y minus 4 squared plus y squared minus 4 times negative 2y minus 4 minus 9y minus 32 equals 0. The next step would be basically to take what you have and simplify it. Now, be really careful. This first part is negative 2y minus 4 times negative 2y minus 4. Don't be tempted to shortcut that. That is FOIL, full-on FOIL, so make sure that you're very careful. That basically will turn out to be 4y squared plus 16y plus 16 when you finish it. Plus the y squared. I'm going to distribute the negative 4, so that's going to be plus 8y. Negative 4 times negative 4 is plus 16. Then we bring the negative 9y and the minus 32 down. Equals 0. Once we're kind of finished with parentheses and exponents, I'm going to collect any like terms that we have. Right, so we have the y squared, so that's going to be 5y squared here. We've got a 16y, an 8y, and a negative 9y. So that's basically going to end up being a positive 15y. The next part is the positive 16, so that's 32, and then minus 32, so we end up getting no constant at all, so it's just equal to 0. When you have two terms you want to factor with the GCF, so we know that we have 5y that's common to both parts. So you're left with y plus 3 as your two factors. Once we solve this, we can say that 5y equals 0, which would make y equal to 0, and y plus 3 equal to 0, or that y would be equal to negative 3. I already have a really nice equation that's kind of already set up for solving for x, so I'm just basically going to bring these two values we solved here. I'm going to plug them into y and get my two x coordinates. So the first one would be x equals negative 2 times 0 minus 4. So we end up getting a coordinate of negative 4 comma 0 once we're finished. Right, that basically ends up being negative 4. The second one is going to be x equals negative 2 times negative 3 minus 4, which turns out to be 6 minus 4, or just 2. So the second coordinate would be 2 comma negative 3. So my two solutions would be these coordinates here. Okay. Now, the one thing that's not represented here is intersecting a line with a parabola. And we did this on the board in class. That's actually a lot like what we did with the circle here, number 2, but it's actually easier. I don't have to complete this. I don't have two parts. I'll end up getting just one squared part. So it turns out to be a little bit less work than the circle. But it's a lot like that. The next part, we're going to bring up our equation for a circle, x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. So really I'm going to be plugging into this equation. And so we're going to say x minus negative 13 squared plus y minus 7 squared equals, before I write it there, I know that I'm going to be doing 4 square roots of 2 all squared. So I'm going to square all the parts. So 4 squared is 16. The square root of 2 squared is just 2. So we end up getting 32 equals r squared. Now remember, I just want r squared, so don't go backwards and then square root the whole thing again. You just kind of undo what you just worked on. Okay, the next part, number 4, is to find the center. Now, really be careful, and when you have a question like this, make sure that you look at the scale. Sometimes these boxes aren't units of 1. So center is going to be negative 3, 4. These are 1, so it's nice. We have 1, 2, 3. So the radius is 3. So it's just x minus negative 3 squared, so x plus 3 squared, plus y minus 4 squared equals 9. Don't forget to square your r. Number 5, we're going to basically start out by using the midpoint formula to get my center. So that's going to be basically the average of the two coordinates, 1 plus 3 over 2, and 14 plus negative 8, or just 14 minus 8 over 2. This is going to get me a coordinate of 4 over 2, which is just 2, and 6 over 2, which is 3. To find the radius, I'm basically going to plug that point in for x and y. We're going to bring up my equation. Basically, when I plug in the center, it looks like this. X minus 2 squared equals plus y minus 3 squared equals r squared, which is what I don't have. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that one coordinate that I have here, and I'm going to take the x and the y from here and plug in here for x and here for y. So we'll say 1 minus 2 squared plus 14 minus 3 squared. This is negative 1 squared, or just 1, plus this is 11 squared, which is 121. So that would add up to 122. And so we'll end up basically replacing this with my 122, and that's what I want. All right, the writing equations of parabolas, in my opinion, being able to graph these, at least in a general sense, goes a long way in making this a lot easier. So you'll notice that each time I get a parabola, I kind of make a very rough sketch of that parabola. I'm not trying to get points or size. I'm just trying to get the direction. Is it opening up, down, left, or right? One of the first things I'm going to plot is the vertex if they give it to me. So -8, 0. Here's -8 over here on the x-axis. 0 is on that axis. So there's the vertex. I know that the focus, the same x coordinate, but it's just a little above it. And that's all I needed to know this graph opens upwards, because it opens in the direction from the vertex toward the focus. That means that P is really easy to observe here. P is just 1/8, right? Because the distance from the vertex to the focus is 1/8. So we're going to write our equation. It's going to be 4P, or 4 times 1/8, times y minus k, which is 0, equals x minus h, which is -8 squared. Remember, if it's opening up and down, I'm going to be choosing the formula that has x squared in it, right? So this would be 4p times y minus k, or k, equals x minus h squared. So that's the basic formula I'm working on. The only thing I have to do here is to simplify this. Now, if you're looking at the formula sheet the answer key for the review guide, you'll notice that these forms are a little different. Not a big deal. It's in vertex form instead of this form. So pay attention to how it looks here. It'll look similar, but just kind of keep up with it. For the number 7, I'm going to do the same thing. This time we're not given the focus, but we're given the directrix. So the parabola is going to be opening in the opposite direction. So here we're in the third quadrant. So we're over here at -7 and down here at -10. So there's my vertex. So well, if I do this division, I know that that is equal to like -9.95. And the only thing that's important here is I know that that's above -10, right? So -9.5, let's just suppose that it's it's that point, -9.95, which means the directrix is going to look like this. It's way above it. It's almost right on it. But the distance here is P, and I know that the graph is going to be opening away from that parabola, away from that directrix like this. So we know that we're going to be choosing the 4P, just like last time, but this one's opening down. 4P times y minus k equals x minus h squared. Now I can already plug in the vertex and almost have the entire equation done except for P. We know y minus -10 equals x minus -7 squared, which is 2/3 of all the pieces I'm trying to find. But the distance from 10 to, if you do 240 over 24, or -240 over 24, this is equal to -10. So the distance here, the difference is 1/24. That's what my P becomes, right? So it's easier to kind of think about fractions like that. So I'm going to plug that in. So you're going to end up getting 4 times -1/24. This should be negative. Which that becomes -1/6, right? So we'll bring that rest of that down. Y plus 10 equals x plus 7 squared. It is much easier to work in the fractions when you get something crazy like this. And on the test, I'm not going to give you 2 weird numbers. That's kind of a big number. But you will see fractions like that, and being able to know the differences between them is really important. Number 8 basically starts off giving you the vertex again. So if we sketch this out real quick, it's at 0, +2, so here it is. And I have an x-intercept of 4. Remember, x-intercepts are values that are on the x-axis. That's 4, 0. So I would have a point right here. So this is your 4. This would be your 2. That means the graph has to go like this if it has one x-intercept. That means we are working with the formula where it's 4p times x minus h equals y minus k squared. That's the formula for when it's on its side, left and right. Now this case, P is going to be positive because it is opening to the right. Now, I'm going to be solving for P, so it's going to work out anyway. I don't really have to worry about this. It's when I have to look at the graph to find P, and then I have to make sure that I add the right formula. If I'm solving for it, it's going to work out just algebraically. So I'm going to plug in here. Remember, this is going to be your X and your Y, just like with the circle. This is your H and your K. We're going to plug all 4 of those values in. So X is 4, minus H, which is 0. Then Y, which is your 0. Your K, which is your 2, squared. So we end up getting 16P equals, well, negative 2 squared is 4. So P is 1/4, which is positive and is exactly what we thought it was going to be. So the solution would be 1/4 times 4. When I plug that in, when I plug this right here into P, that's easy. That's just going to be 1. So it would be X minus 0 equals Y minus 2 squared, or probably you would see it look like this on the multiple choice answers. They would simplify everything as far as they could. All right, now going over to this one, this is the one where I don't get the vertex at all. So this one's a little trickier. I do notice here that if I'm looking at the fractions, they're almost the same fraction. They're just a little bit different. And I know halfway in between the two of them, I have 152 over 76. That turns out to be the number -2. And we know that when I graph a parabola, halfway between the parabola, or halfway between the focus and the directrix, is going to be my vertex. So the number halfway would be there. So let's just kind of sketch this one out. So I'm over here at negative, this one is, the focus is at -2 point something. So here's 1, here's 2. So -2 point something. It's going to be a little bit bigger than 2, and it's way down up here at +9. So out here, that's your focus. Your directrix is going to be, this number is a little bit less than 2. So it's kind of -1.9 something. So that's just going to be back here, right? Halfway in the middle is my vertex. That's that -2 point. So it looks like it has a y coordinate of 9 and an x coordinate of -2. So vertex is -2, 9. We also know at this point what P is. We know the distance from 152 over 76 to 153 over 76 is positive, or is a 1/76. But we know that P in this problem is -1/76 because it's opening to the left. And so the distance from here to there, or from here to here, would be just the 1/76. So I'm going to bring my formula down. So 4 times -1 over 76 times, it's going to be x minus -2 equals y minus 9 squared. And I'll simplify that, and you're going to get -1 over 19 times x plus 2 equals y minus 9 squared. And that's how you do it there. There are a couple of videos on graphing parabolas you might want to check out if sketching it was a bit of a tricky part, or trying, in number 9, that had some really bad numbers in it. But if you know what you're looking at, it actually makes it easier to do than some of them. So check those videos out, or go back and look at the tutorials over those things. So as we get into the second page, the first graph here, I wish I had a different graph. This is super awkward because it's going in a fairly large unit. This is obviously -6, so right in here would be -5. You can have a vertex here of -5, +6. Now the point, here's where I'm probably going to just kind of move on from this question, because I don't think the key is correct. If it is, then it's extraordinarily difficult for you to determine where the points are. Officially, I think the points are so difficult to determine. I think you can find that's halfway, this one is halfway, And I think the point here is actually right there. But it's so difficult to determine how that crosses the axis or not. I'm just going to tell you the way that you would do this and the way you would solve it would be, first thing you would do is you would be able to find a point. Let's suppose we use this point right here, right? We know that this mark here is negative 21, and that x coordinate or that y coordinate would be positive 4. The way we would do this, I'm going to assume that this is correct. It may or may not work out to be what's on the answer key, but I'm going to show you the process of how you do it. If you go on like this on the test, you definitely would be able to see those coordinate points a lot easier. So we're going to be working with 4p times, let's see here, it's going to be x minus h equals y minus k all squared. Because we have a parabola on its side, it's going to the left, we know that p is going to eventually become negative. 4p is going to be equal to, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and just kind of plug these right in. We're going to use this one. This is going to be h, this one's going to be k, this will be x, and this is going to be y. So I'm just kind of plug those in as I'm going through it. So x is negative 21. That's going to be minus h, which is negative 5, equals y, which is 4 minus the k coordinate of positive 6. And that's going to be squared. So we're going to kind of bring this together. 4p times 21 minus 5 is going to be negative 16 equals negative, it's essentially going to be negative 2 squared. That'll be just 4. So once I multiply these together, you're going to get 64 times 4, negative 64 times p equals positive 4. Basically divide, you're going to find out that p is going to be equal to 1/16. So when I work this out and I plug it back into the equation, I'll get, we'll do 4 times 1/16. That's really going to just give me 1/4. Okay, so it's going to be 1/4 times x minus negative 5 equals y minus 6 all squared. And I think this is actually the version on the key. The 4 is just on the wrong side. If you just add the 5 and divide by 4, you'll get this. And that should it be negative? Yeah, I'm sorry, that should be negative. Okay, so this is what the answer is. But this one is a really bad example. These coordinates that you see over here are just really difficult to determine. I would not give you something like that. But that's the process you would do it. Okay, the last 4 questions are kind of double laced. There's 2 questions here each. I'm going to ask you to complete the square and graph it. If I do this on the test, it will be very few of them, just to kind of get it out there. So I think that the first 2 are going to be circles, and the last 2 are going to be the parabolas. And so what I'm going to do is kind of walk you through one of each. I'm not going to do both because I think if you can understand one of them, you can understand all of them. So we're going to do number 12. We'll do that one because it's got the 4s out front. So this is how you completing the square and then graph the circle. The graphing part is super easy, but we're going to complete the square. So we're going to organize first. We've done this a bunch. 4 squared minus 28x. Then we're going to bring in the y squared, so plus 4y squared. That's going to be plus 16. And that's going to be equal to negative 53. The organization here is that I want to get these squared terms on one side, so there's both squared, like x and y are both squared. So all the x's and the y's are both going to be on one side, and then the constant value is going to be on the opposite side. So what we'll do here is we will basically say we're going to factor the coefficient of whatever's in front of x squared and y squared out. So 4 comes out front, and you're left with x squared minus 7x. And this is where I leave myself a little blank. Then plus 4 again outside. And then you're going to have y squared plus 4. And of course, leave ourselves a blank here. and then equals negative 53. So this is just giving me some room. It's allowing me to see what b over 2 squared is going to end up being. So right here, so b over 2 squared is what we're going to be working with. So 7 over 2 squared that's going to be 49 over 4. Don't freak out with the fraction. It's actually not going to be really a big deal. It's just going to write it right here. So 49, because that's 7 times 7, and then 2 times 2. So 49 fourths. Now remember, when we go to write this on the other side of the equation, we're going to have to take that value and multiply times that. This is nice because the 4s are going to cancel out, and I'll end up getting plus 49 all by itself on that side. If we do this again, this one's going to be a lot easier. 4 over 2 squared, which is just 2 squared, which is 4. So we'll end up getting plus 4 here. So that's really going to be just plus 16, because we had to multiply again 4 times the 4 out front to get the 16. Now, to rewrite this, we're going to go ahead and kind of bring it back down. The 4 comes down, and then it's x is the variable. I squared, oops, I got this wrong. That's negative. I squared negative 7 halves. So we're going to put negative 7 halves right here, which is just 3.5. Squared plus, bring in 4 again. This time it's going to be y plus 2, all squared again. That's going to be equal to, it's going to be equal to just 12. Now, the last step is to divide that number out front. And this is only for the circle. Basically, we want to just have it x minus 7 over 2 squared plus y plus 2 squared equals just 3. And I'll leave it like this, right? And so here again, these are kind of crazy numbers, but the fraction doesn't matter. Really, that's 3.5. So if I'm going to go to graph this, the center is at, so we'll write it right here, center is at negative 3.5. No, positive 3.5. And negative 2. So I'm going to put that down. 3.5, so 3.5, and then go down to negative 2. So right here is my center, and the radius is, so r is equal to the square root of 3, and here again, use decimals at 1.7, so just a little bit under 2. So if I go up 1 and then 2, so I'm going to put a number just under 2, go over 1 and then 2, just underneath that, 1, 2. Here again, I'm not really looking for exact values, just so long as it's kind of close. I'm going to look at your actual numbers down here as to what the actual value is. As long as the circle's in the right place, you should be solid. Okay? So that's what you do. The only part here is that you have to be careful about is that 4. Make sure you divide that. It's always going to be the same number, and generally speaking, it's usually divisible by the number on the other side here. Okay? Let's go down to the parabola. We'll do 13. It looks a little bit more involved. So we're going to do it again. 2x squared minus 8x. And the parabola only has one squared term, so we're going to get everything else on the other side, which is equal to negative y minus 9. Okay, here again, factor. Going to get that 2 out front, minus 4x. Leave myself some space. And then we're going to have negative y minus 9. Just leave that alone for now. We're going to complete the square, right? Negative 4 over 2 squared is going to be negative 2 squared, or positive 4. Plus 4 here, but we're going to be adding 8 on this side. Remember, 4 times the 2, and then bring it over here. So we'll bring it down, 2, and then x minus 2, that's coming from here, right there, squared equals negative y minus 1. To get the form right, we want to make sure that the squared term doesn't have anything outside of it. So I'm going to do a couple things. I'm going to say I want to get the y variable positive, so we're going to factor out the negative 1 first, plus 1. And then we're going to divide everything by 2. So that cancels, and you're left with x minus 2 squared equals negative 1/2 times y plus 1. Now we're ready to graph. So vertex is the coordinate 2, negative 1, and then p is equal to, remember we're going to do this, we're going to set it equal to, so let's do it this way, 4p equals negative 1/2. So we divide by 4, really I'm multiplying by 1/4. So p is negative 1/8. Right? So the next part here, what we're going to do is we're going to write down the orientation. Did it say to list anything? Yeah, okay, so we're going to identify all the parts too. Okay, so this graph is opening down. We know that it's negative, p is negative, and it's an x squared. So by noticing this scenario and the fact that there's a negative involved, that's what's telling me it's going to be opening down. So let's go ahead and plot those points. So 2, negative 1 is going to be here. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to go, if it's opening down, I can kind of already sketch that in, right? I know that there's a focus inside. There's a focus here. And just behind it, right here, this is my directrix. We also know we have the axis that goes straight down the middle. This is the easier one. This is the axis of symmetry. So how do we get all these coordinates? Well, everything starts off by basing it on the vertex. So what we're going to do, we're going to say, since we already got the vertex, we're going to do, let's do the focus next, right? We know that the focus is going to take the vertex and it's moving down. So I'm going to be subtracting 1/8 from 2. So I'll write it out just kind of without doing the math. 2 minus 1/8, and I'm going to keep the same x coordinate. Oops, sorry. Got ahead of myself. It's going to have 2, but the y, it's moving up and down, so it's the y coordinate is changing. And so we're going to be saying it is negative 1 minus 1/8. There's a lot of ways you can write that. I'm going to write this as a mixed number, but if you said negative 1 and 1/8, that's totally fine. So the focus would end up being 2, comma, I guess just negative 9/8 is probably what you would see. You could also write negative 1 and 1/8. I think the decimal form of that is negative 1.125. I really don't care. They're all accurate. And what we're going to do the same thing. The directrix is just above that, so it's going horizontally through the y-axis. And so I was at negative 1, so I'm going to go backwards 1/8. So it's going to be negative 7/8 is the directrix. The axis of symmetry is generally the easiest of all of them. It's vertical, so it's going through the x-axis. So it's going to be x equals whatever the x-coordinate of the vertex is. And that's x equals positive 2, because that's where it goes through the x-axis. So that gets me the 4 points of the parabola, or 4 parts, I guess 5 parts of the parabola. You've got the graph, and you have the 2 lines, and you have the 2 points. Let's continue. We'll do the other parabola just for practice graphing. So we're going to have y squared. You know what? I'm going to write it with the y minus 0 squared equals, this one's actually relatively easy, negative x minus 4. Y minus 0 squared equals negative x plus 4. Remember, we want to keep it in the same format. So vertex, super nice. It's going to be negative 4 positive, or 0. We know that 4 times p, that's that outside part right here, is equal to just negative 1. So p happens to be negative 1/4. Let's go ahead and plot this. Okay, we're going to say negative 4, 0 is right here. The fact that y squared is the term that is squared, and it's negative, it means I'm going to be moving this graph or drawing it to the left, kind of like this. If I go 1/4 to the left, put the focus, it's going to be somewhere right in here. That's where the focus is. The directrix is going to be back here a little bit. Let's do the focus. So the focus, if I take the vertex and I move to the left, that means I'm changing the x coordinate. So we're going to say -4 minus 1/4. And then it's going to have the same y coordinate of 0. So basically, you could say -4.25, comma 0 would be the focus. The directrix is just the other direction. So we would say -4 plus 1/4. So that's basically going to end up being the directrix is vertical. So it's x equals -3.75. Or -3 3/4, kind of however you want to do it. The axis of symmetry, this is basically the x-axis, so it's going to be y equals 0, that horizontal line right here. All right, 1, 2, 3, and 4 are the parts we wanted to identify, and that's how you would graph it and complete the square. I hope this helps. There are plenty of videos. There's several videos, I think 3 or 4 of them, that kind of go over a lot of these things as well. Take your time. The graphing part has the most pieces to it. There's not a lot of anything on the test. I know that the one thing on the front page where you had to kind of build the equation from the parabola tends to be the one that gets most people the hardest time. So take your time. If you have any questions, I'll be there early in the morning about 7:10 if you want to come in with any other questions. Good luck, and let me know how it goes.